Hello dear soulmate, welcome back to my channel. My name is Esther. If you're joining us for the first time, thank you for stopping by. If you're a returning subscriber, thank you for watching. So in this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make this stylish long sleeve shirt that has, a one-sided drawstring that can be attached to the waist of the other side, as you can see in the video. This is going to be a very beginner friendly video, and trust me, it's going to be very detailed. If you're interested in watching, if you're interested in learning, join me while we get started. So let's get into this. So these are the materials I'll be using. I'll be making use of this green crepe fabric. It's about 1.5 yards. This is collar stay, hemming gum, and button. So these are what I'll be using for the making of this dress. So now I'm going to start drafting the front pattern of this dress. This is my pattern paper, and I'm going to take a measurement of 3 inches from the top of my paper. Then I'm going to draw a straight line there. That is going to serve as my shoulder line. Okay, so I'm doing this because I'll be doing some little alteration at the top there. Okay, so from that side, from the side of the paper, I'm going to mark 2 inches, and I'm going to be using these 2 inches for my placket. Okay, because of the areas we have the button. So I'm just going to draw a straight line there and connect it together. So ensure you also do the same, and please make sure that your lines are straight. Okay, so I realized that my paper, the measurement is not up to the end of the paper, so I'm just connecting it. Although at this point I've not measured the full length of this dress. So you're going to be using this part for your placket. You can go ahead and label it, but that starting line at the top is my shoulder line, and that is where I'll be starting to take all my measurements from, all my vertical measurements. So I'm going to mark my shoulder to bust from that line. I'm going to mark my shoulder to bust, shoulder to waist, and shoulder to hip. And I'm also going to mark shoulder to the full length of the dress. Okay, so once you mark your shoulder to bust at various points, just go ahead and connect them together. I'm using 15 inches for shoulder to the waist, and for the bust I'm using 9 inches. So use whatever measurements that you want to use depending on the measurement you're working with. Okay, then after that, go ahead and connect them together as you can see me do. You can also go ahead and label them so that when you're working on them, you'll be able to identify them. Okay, so I'm going to be taking the waist to the hip measurement, and standard is usually 9 inches, but sometimes it can be 8 inches, it can be 8.5, it can be 9 inches. So it's very advisable you take the measurement on your client or on yourself if you're working on yourself. Okay, so you're just going to impute that and draw a straight line. And for the length of the dress, if you're taking the full length of the dress, just go ahead and start from your shoulder line to impute the full length. Okay, I'm actually working with about 29 inches, and that's about 5 inches below my hip line. So I'm just going to come down from the hip line and mark 5 inches. Okay, I don't want the shirt to be too long, and I don't want it to be too short at the same time. So some people actually stop at the hip length. That is totally fine, because some do not want it to be too long, just want something that's moderate. So use whatever measurement that you want. Okay, you can even decide to just come down by 2 inches or 1 inch from the hip. That is still fine. Okay, so this is the full length of my dress, and now I'm going to label it the hip line and the full length. Okay, so after doing this, I can now start working on my horizontal measurement. But before that, I'm going to come to the shoulder area, and I'm going to be imputing my shoulder measurements divided by 2. So I'm working with 15 inches, and when I divide it by 2, I have 7.5. I just mark it there, and I came down by 2 inches. Okay, I'm using 2 inches slope because of this shirt and the shape of the shoulder, how it slopes downward. So I'm not going to be using 1 inch or 1.5 like I used to. I'm using 2 inches. And for the neck width, I marked 3 inches width and 3 inches depth for the front neckline, which I am connecting together, as you can see. Okay, if you're watching my previous videos, you should be used to this. So now I'm going to connect that neck width to the shoulder slope of 2 inches I used earlier. Okay, so now for me to get the armhole depth, this is what I did. My bust circumference divided by 6, and I added 1.5. Just simply take your bust measurement, divide it by 6, and add 1.5. Okay, mine was 7.1, but I'm going to use 7 inches. Okay, so on my bust line, I'm going to take my measurement of 7.5 inches, which is my shoulder measurement, divided by 2, because I want the line to be straight and accurate. So this point that I marked 7 inches for my armhole depth is going to serve as a chest line. So if your chest line is not exactly on your bust line, please draw out your chest line after you have marked it. Do not connect it like mine, okay? Mine was stopping at the bust line, and that was the reason why I'm using my bust line directly. So you can see what I did. I took the midpoint of what I have on this armhole depth from 7 inches, that should be 3.5. I just come in by half of an inch at that midpoint, and I've marked my bust circumference divided by 4 on the bust line, which is serving as my chest line as well, okay? So I'm going to use my curve ruler like this to connect these 3 points: the point of the shoulder slope tip, the half an inch I came in from the center, and where I mark my bust circumference divided by 4 on the bust line, which is serving as a chest line as well. Remember that if yours is not stopping on the bust line, please draw out your chest line for where it stopped. That is the 7 inches that I got, that point it stopped. Go ahead and draw your chest line there and then connect, okay? So now I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 4. I'm imputing it on my waistline, and I'm also imputing the hip measurement divided by 4. So what I have on the hip measurement, I'm going to be using the same thing for the full length, okay? So at this point, I'm going to connect the bust point divided by 4 to the waist divided by 4 and the hip divided by 4 that I've already marked on the paper, and that's what I'm using my ruler to connect. So for the hip and the full length, I'm going to be using the same thing, so I just draw a straight line there. Now I'm not using my marker, and I know it's not visible, and there's a reason, because I want to do some little adjustments. So I'm going to connect what I have from the bust point to the hip together, and obviously when you do that, you'll be realizing that there are lots of gap during the waist area. And what I'm going to do is that I'm going to share that part into 2 equal parts, and then what I have for half of it, I'm going to be adding it to the waist. Now, first of all, we do not want our dress to be body hug. We don't want something that is so tight. We want something that is free. That is why I'm going to be adding ease allowance of 0.75 from the bust to the waist and the hip. And for that part that I shared into 2 and added to the waist, of course, this is a shirt, it's not meant to be fitted, and if you have your waist tight or fitted, it's going to look very funny. So that is the reason why we are adding that little allowance at that point, so that it can be free, okay? So after doing that, I went ahead to draw a straight line. So I connected it together with a straight line. Remember that on the waist, I added half of what I have between the space that I have from joining the bust to the hip, and I added 0.75 ease allowance for all sides, okay? This is to make it, a bit loose. That means at the end of the day, you should be having 3 inches space. So from the full length at the hem area, I came up by 2 inches from the side, and I took the midpoint of that full length. From that midpoint, I'm coming up by half of an inch. This is me trying to shape in the hemline, okay? This is totally dependent on the design you have, but right here, I'm just going to have a normal shirt design, and this is how I want to do it, okay? So just go ahead and connect it together like that. And at this point, we are obviously done here. I'll just go ahead and add my seam allowance, okay? So you can cut it out and add your seam allowance on your fabric, but I just want to cut everything down on my pattern paper, especially because this video is beginner friendly, to make it easy for us, especially when cutting. So I added my seam allowance. I'm using 1 inch for my seam allowance. You can use whatever inch you want to use, maybe 1.5 or half of ham, or 0.75 or 1.25, but I think 1 inch is actually okay for the seam allowance, okay? So I've gone ahead to add it. I just labeled it so that we can be able to understand and tell, okay? So for this other side, I'll be adding half of an inch. Remember I said I'm going to be adding my allowance on the paper, so I'll be adding half of an inch all around, okay? I just went ahead to extend the neckline to that placket area. And now for this neckline, I'm just going to cut it out, okay? So while cutting it, I also realized that I've not added the hem allowance. Of course, since I added 1 inch allowance for my seam allowance at the side, I'll be using 1 inch for the hem as well. You can use whatever you want. You don't have to use exactly what I'm using, okay? But just make sure you work with what you have added, okay? What you add is what you should subtract. So for the upper part, I'm going to add half of an inch, and I'm trying to cut here. Then I remember that I've not added the inches, so I'm just going to add it. And after adding 1 inch, I'm going to label it. So you can see I'm just going to follow the shape of what I drew earlier to mark that 1 inch, so that when I'm connecting it, it will, still create that curve and it will align well. So soulmate, after connecting it, I'm going to label it and cut it out. So if you find this tutorial very helpful, please do not hesitate to give us a thumbs up. Okay, share our videos to people, especially beginners, because this video is obviously beginner friendly. And also follow us on our social media platform on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for watching. If you are finding it very helpful, please subscribe to our channel so that you can get more notification when we upload new videos. Okay, so now we're going to be working on this shoulder area. Of course, when we want to make our shirts, the back part is always longer than the front. Okay, so you can actually do this on your fabric. When you're cutting it, you can just cut out the part you want from here. For now, I'm going to be using 1.5 inches. You can use 2 inches or 1 inch, but I think 1.5 is okay. So I'm just going to connect that point together. After marking the 1.5 inches there, I'm going to go ahead and connect it. So by the time let's say you've taken out that 1.5 inches, I'm folding it just to show you what it's going to look like. This is what the shirt is going to be looking like from the front. Okay, so you can just go ahead and just cut it out and take it to your fabric and cut it, or you can just cut it on the pattern. So because I'm trying to make the video beginner friendly, I'm going to be working on my pattern. Okay, so this is my back piece right now, and as you can see, I've gone ahead to repeat the same thing, the 3 inches at the top, and then for this, it's not going to be having a placket, so I'm just going to be working with my center back like that. For the neck width, I used 1 inch for the depth instead of 3 inches. Back is not meant to be wide like that, so I'm connecting it with my curve, and I still use a shoulder slope of 2 inches, just the same way I did it for the front. So I basically repeated everything for the front piece, and that's what I'm doing here. So for the bust line, I've already marked my bust circumference divided by 4, and I've marked it there, and I'm taking the midpoint of my armhole depth. So from that point, I did not go in by half of an inch like I did from the front, okay, because the front is usually deeper than the back. I'll just connect from that half of an inch to where I mark my bust circumference divided by 4 on the bust line, which is serving as my chest line. Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and have the 0.75 ease allowance and 1 inch seam allowance that I added for the front. Okay, that's exactly what I'm doing. After marking the waist measurement divided by 4, I added 0.75 and 1 inch for the seam allowance and the ease allowance. So I'm going to repeat the same thing for the hip and the full length. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm saying. So after marking them, I'm going to connect them together. So I advise you take it slowly. Okay, you don't have to rush it like the way I'm just doing everything fast, although I'm still trying to make it very easy for us to understand, and I believe we will understand. So after marking the waist, I realized that the waist was pointy and different from the front, so I went to take that allowance that I added before. Remember that allowance we did when I took in half of what I have from the measurement I've gotten when I connected the bust to the hip. That small measurement I have there, I went ahead to measure it from the front piece, and I marked it there. After marking the ease allowance and the 1 inch allowance, I marked it on the waist and reconnected it again, so I can get equal measurement with the front and the back. So just go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that I've done it, I'll be working with the new line and not the old line. So for this full length, I decided to add 1 inch at the back because I want the back to be 1 inch longer than the front. This is totally optional. You don't have to do this, but it's just me. So I'm trying to create the hem design I did before. Same thing I did for the front is the same thing you're going to do for the back. Okay, and after doing that, you will just go ahead and measure it. I took the midpoint of the full length, came up rather by half of an inch from that point, and I connected it together. So like I said, this is totally optional. You don't have to add the extra 1 inch below, but you can just go ahead and make sure that whatever you use for the front hem is what you use for the back, so that they both align. So after doing this, I'm supposed to add 1 inch allowance for the hemming allowance. Okay, then I realized that I was marking this at the wrong point, so I'm supposed to connect that curve to the new line I drew earlier, because that is the new line I'm supposed to be working with, the new line which I added 1 inch allowance. So I went ahead to reconnect it. So I'll be working with that new line instead of the first one, okay? And from that point, I'm going to be marking the 1 inch allowance and I'll reconnect it again. I hope you understand what I'm saying, okay? So after doing this, I'm just going to label it the hem allowance so that we don't get confused. If you don't understand, just try replaying the video again and take it slowly. Of course, I believe you will get it. And if you have any question, please leave it in the comment section, okay? So now that I've done this for the back piece, we're actually done with the bodice. We're going to come to this side and then talk about the shoulder. Remember I said that the back shoulder is supposed to be longer than the front shoulder, and for the front I said we are going to be taking out 1.5 inches from there. So I'm labeling my pattern so that it can be easy for us to tell. That 1.5 inches I'm taking off from the front, I'm going to be adding it to the back, because the back is supposed to be 1.5 inch longer than the front, and the front is supposed to be that same 1.5 inch lower. It can be 2 inches, 1 inch, depending. So I'm trying to align my shoulder lines to be equal. Sometimes they are not usually equal, and the best way to know it is to align it well, okay? So sometimes you can have like 0.25 inches, 0.25 inch excess from the front or the back, or it can even be half of an inch. So it's always good to check it to ensure that it aligns. So I'm going to add half of an inch all around, which I have already done, as you can see. So that upper line, I'm not going to be using it. Remember I marked 1.5 inch from here. I just added half of an inch on top of it, and I'll be working with it. So that's going to be my sewing allowance, which I'll be using to join the shoulder, and the half of an inch from the neck and the the armhole. I also went ahead to add it, which I'll be using for joining. And right now I'm going to go ahead and cut it out, okay? So I'm just going to take my time to cut it out, and I also advise that you watch me while I'm cutting it so that you don't cut the wrong part because of the measurement. And for this placket area, instead of using half of an inch for the joint, for the allowance there, I added 0.75 because sometimes there's usually a shortage there. It's not always like that, but just in case, okay? So for the back piece now, for me to cut this part, I'm going to add that 1.5 inch I took away from the front. I'm going to add it back here. Like I said, this can be done on the fabric, but because of this tutorial, I want it to be very clear and straightforward. So that's why I am doing this, okay? So just go ahead and follow me and extend all these lines up. When you extend them, you'll be able to, connect them together. So I'm going to use my marker to also make it very visible that we can see it, okay? Take your time to do it and follow the process little by little. So I'm going to use my marker to make these lines visible. I just extended this neckline like this and then connected this part like this as well. Then from this side where I have the shoulder slope point, I'm also going to connect it, okay? But before doing that, I'm going to close the sewing allowance I have on my front piece, and I'm going to place it on that shoulder line just to ensure that it aligns, okay? So it has to align, it has to be equal, so that when you're joining it, you don't have issues. So I realized that it was correct with what I drew there with my pencil before, so I went ahead to use that same line. So if you marked it and you see that it's not the same, please adjust it, okay? Just go ahead and adjust it. So as it is right now, I am good to go. I'll just add half of an inch all around. As you can see, I have already done that from the neck to the shoulder, from the shoulder to the armhole. And for the bodies, we already added our 1 inch sewing allowance and the hem allowance. So the next thing is to cut it out. Like I said, if you find this tutorial helpful, please do not hesitate to subscribe to our channel. Share this video to those that will find it very useful, and also subscribe to our channel. Do not hesitate to leave a question in the comment section if you have any. We are always there to reply your messages. Thank you guys for your support. So after cutting it now, this is what it's going to look like. As you can see, I have my back piece and I also have my front piece. So I'm going to take it to my fabric and I'm going to be cutting it out, okay? So for the back piece, I'm going to cut it on fold, and for the front, I'm going to cut 2 pieces. So before going to transfer it to fabric, I'm going to be I'm going to be working on the sleeve. The sleeve is a long sleeve that will be having a cuff, okay? So I went ahead to draw a starting line at the top of my paper, as you can see. So I went ahead to draw a starting line. I'm going to be measuring my cap width, which is going to be my bust circumference divided by 6 plus 1.5, which I did earlier. Before that I said I had 7.1 and I made use of 7 for the front. So I'm just going to be taking note of that. And for the height, I'm just going to divide my bust circumference by 12, which I had 2.8 and added 1 inch. It gave me 3.8. So that 3.8 is what I'm marking here for my cap height rather. Sorry, I don't know why I'm saying cup. So I'm going to be marking it for my cap height, and I'm going to be connecting that line together with a straight line. Okay, this is going to serve as my cap height. Okay, so I'm also going to mark other vertical measurements, and that'll be my from the shoulder to the elbow. Okay, so that starting line I marked earlier, I'll just call it the shoulder line. Okay, so it's going to be like the shoulder to the elbow and shoulder to the wrist. So I'm working with a shoulder to the elbow of 12.5 and to the wrist of 25 inches. So go ahead and connect it. So I realized my paper is too short and it's not going to be enough, so I went ahead to add extra paper at the hem for it. So while I was trying to measure it, I realized the paper was not smoothly placed and it was giving me a lot of issues. So I'm just going to tape it down afterwards. So after taking my measurements, I'm going to connect that line together and I'm going to label it. Okay, I'll also put my paper in place. So when you're doing this, please ensure your paper is laying flat so that it doesn't give you issue when you are working on it. Then I'll label it wrist, elbow, and then the other side, the one at the top, is going to serve as my cap height, which I'll be using to work. Okay, so at this point now we're going to be working on this part, and I'm just going to measure my cap width on that line. Okay, my cap width of 7 inches, 7.1 actually. I marked it there, and I'm going to connect from the tip of this shoulder line, and I'm going to connect it to that 7 inches there. As you can see, I'm going to connect them together like that. So just draw a slanted line. Just draw a slant or a straight line actually that is more like a slanted line. Just connect it from that point. Okay, so before I did that, I realized that I did not add the ease allowance of 0.75 that I added for the shirt, which I noticed that it's going to give me issue if I don't do that. So please, when you're making use of when you're trying to do your calculation, all you need to do is to add that ease allowance, or before even dividing by 6 and adding 1.5, go ahead and add it first. Okay, so you can see what I did. I took the midpoint of what I have on that line and I came up and down 0.75 on both sides, and now I'm placing my curve and connecting it from that top to the point that is below the 0.75, and I'm going to be using that for my front piece. Okay, I already have a video on how to make a front sleeve, but based on the alteration I'm making on this shirt, I'm going to be using this part. So I'm going to connect that same top, that shoulder point, to the point that is up, okay, where I marked the 0.25, and I'm going to connect it to the sleeve point, that is the arm's eye point. Okay, and that will serve as the back. I'm using another marker for us to be able to indicate it. Like I said, for us to mark that the cap width, make sure that instead of, let's take for example, my bust circumference was 34 inches, you can add 3 inches, because 0.75 times 4 is 3 inches. You can add it to the 34 inches before dividing by 6 and adding 1.5 to get your cap width, or just go ahead and do it the same way I did and add 0.75 there. So for the elbow, I'm taking the round elbow measurement divided by 2. Go ahead and do that. And here I'm also taking my wrist measurement. I just wanted to show you that you should take your wrist measurement from this part of your hand, not from that smaller part. Okay, so that it can be, easy flow of movements for your hand when you're doing it. Just add a little allowance. I'm using 8.5, then divided by 2 is 4.25. I went ahead to mark it and connect it to the elbow line, as you can see. Okay, so please, while doing this, make sure you take it slowly, and you can always replay the video to get it right. Okay, and ask any question you want in the comment section. So for this part, I'm using the curve ruler. And notice I did not use the part that is so curvy, especially if the person you're working with is very busty. It's not advisable. Just make it to be a little bit curvy, not so much, just like mine. Okay, so at this point I'm done with the drafting of the sleeve pattern. What I'm going to do next is to work on this area of my cuff. I'm going to take away 2 inches from the hem of that of this sleeve, that is the wrist area. I marked 2 inches at that point, and I'm connecting that point together. So after connecting it, I'm going to be taking it off. That 2 inches is going to serve as my cuff. Okay, so when we are making this dress, we are going to be seeing how it is done. So I'm going to take out that 2 inches away from it because I'll be working with this new line. For this new line, I'm going to add half of an inch all round there, because of course I'll be joining it, so I need that half of an inch joining allowance. Remember, we are adding all our allowance and measurements on the pattern so that we can, just cut it directly on the fabric. So I'm going to connect them together, and I added about 1 inch seam allowance. Like I said, you can add whatever allowance you want. You can add 0.75, 1.25, just use what works for you, what you like. Okay, so I'm using 1 inch here, and I am going to connect it together. That part is going to be my seam allowance. The only part I will not be adding allowance is this upper part, and that's because it has both front and back. Okay, so after that I went ahead to cut it. Now watch me, I am cutting from the back piece because that part is higher. Okay, so after cutting it, I went ahead to open the paper like this. Remember that you're going to place your paper on the fold. So I'm going to use this side as the back and the other side as the front, so that I can go ahead and cut the front piece out. Remember, the back is higher than the front, so it's better to cut it out from the back. Then after you've separated them, you can now cut out the back out of it, so that you can have one side as the front and one side as the back. Okay, okay, so we are done with the making of this particular sleeve, and as you can see, we have already separated the front and back. Just take it to your fabric, place it on it and cut it out. I've cut out the cuff as well, but please do not fold it like this when you're cutting on your fabric. Ensure you open it flat and then add your half of an inch at the top for joining allowance. Okay, so after doing that, you're done. At this point, I've transferred the front and back piece to the fabric, as you can see, because we are done with the pattern drafting, and we're going to be going to the sewing tutorial, which we'll be doing in the next video that I'll be posting. So stay tuned, subscribe to our channel so you can always be notified when we upload the next video. Thank you guys for watching. See you in my next video.